Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Robert Materazzi. He's the CEO at Lukka. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing at Lukka is really innovative and cool, but maybe before we get into all that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up actually traveling around quite a bit, including in Europe and overseas. My father was working in the hotel industry, and so got exposed to traveling pretty early on.
Very cool.
And spent most of my childhood down in South Florida. Went to Florida State University, studied multinational business, and then
What made you want to take that? Sorry to cut you off.
Sure. No, I think it was the traveling bug, honestly.
Ah.
I knew I wanted to make money, go into corporate America, and I knew I wanted to do that in a global way. But then I ended up joining the Marine Corps straight out of college anyway. So, which was a more spontaneous decision after 9/11. So,
Got you. Okay. So walk us through your you being in the Marines up until basically
2013.
Lukka.
Yeah, no, actually, I went to PwC
Okay.
straight out of the military. So I did my obligation in the military, and then joined PwC into their financial services practice. So as a consultant out of New York City, working primarily with large banks, responding to a lot of the post-financial crisis regulation, and more specifically, all the big technology programs and initiatives that resulted from it. So there's a big focus on cybersecurity and technology risk.
Right.
And then I went to Lukka straight from PwC after about 5 years.
Got you. Very cool. So you worked your way up to CEO at Lukka. Do you want to talk about your journey there and what exactly Lukka does?
Sure, yeah, and I saw. Maybe I'll start with why I joined Lukka.
Sure.
At the time they had pivoted after raising their Series A funding from a more retail tax crypto tax calculator type of a solution to institutional solutions, and they were catering to fund administrators first. A couple other enterprises that were OTC desks and exchanges. They had closed some early deals. And really the premise of my role coming in was to sell to more of those. So it was a sales focus. And they realized that the same data problems that these funds and then their fund administrators were having were consistent with what any other business that had crypto data were having. And so my first responsibility was to go figure that out and to just whiteboard with all these, big logos that were already very dominant in the crypto industry, so that we could build institutional quality software for them. And
Okay.
Lukka was doing that with AICPA SOC controls for service organizations. And I was very familiar with those from PwC years, and was very impressed that Lukka was going to be the first company in the crypto industry to ever have those. And I thought it was very forward looking that they were building a truly institutional quality product that early on. And so that was the main thing that attracted me to joining. And so, yeah, came into sales. We closed a lot of these big names at the time. And those were very challenging because our product was in a much earlier stage, honestly, but it was a perfect way to learn all the really important problems that we had to solve for those customers. And so we ended up building a customer success team. And so that's all of the operations and the customer support that comes, after we close the deal.
Gotcha.
It's a very, very technical team at Lukka. So they're, I say with a lot of confidence that I believe we have trained and brought in experts that know more about crypto data than most of our customers know about their own data. So that's a big strength of ours. And we offer those services on top of software or data subscriptions to assist our customers really with solving any of the big challenges related to their data. And our aim is to continue to offer that on top of our software and data products. And then I did some product roles, and then eventually early 2020, so right before the pandemic started, was asked to be originally co-CEO with Nick, who's now our chairman. And then when we closed Series C, Nick stayed on as executive chairman, and I remained as the CEO, which I am still today. So, and then we've been we raised about 75 million over the last year.
Very cool.
And so have been scaling the company since our Series D closed in March.
Very cool. So how has Lukka evolved in the time that you've been there up until what you guys are doing today?
Yeah, so since we started, we've completely rebuilt our infrastructure that supports our software and data products from when I started. And it's because, when you're learning all of those problems that early on in an industry that's innovating as rapidly as we see in crypto,
Totally.
which I think is really usually once in a lifetime experience. I mean, it's pretty exciting what's going on in the industry. But where we sit, since it's focused on middle and back office operations, it's always going to be challenging to keep up to what everybody's doing in their front offices. And so that's our big goal. So we've learned a lot of those lessons pretty early on, thankfully, and we factored those into the latest versions of all of our software and data, which we're very proud of. And we've built things to be as configurable and flexible as possible so that we can expect the unexpected going forward, as new regulation or rules or any developments occur in the crypto industry. And so we're thankfully, all of our products are more than ready for all the momentum that's going on in the industry. It's really, really nice timing. So we're very excited to have our current software. We've been future-proofing it and trying to very proactively think about anything that can add risk to our customers' books so that we can mitigate it and give them a lot of confidence in using our services.
So what advice do you give, or how are you guys future-proofing your software? Because like a week in crypto is almost like months, arguably maybe even years in other industries.
It is, and that it's a really long answer to give you a couple. And so one, we don't just ask our customers to blindly trust us. We have third-party auditors come in and attest to what we're doing from a risk perspective.
Okay.
So that's a big part of our SOC controls. So there's the way that SOC reports work is we have an auditor come in for at least a 6-month period to test our technology controls, okay, which are meant to mitigate all the risks associated with using our products. And they do that every single year. So it's a huge commitment. It's a very big lift. It takes a lot of resources, but it's well worth it because it's just a very, very important thing for us to be able to do for our customers. And we're constantly adding new certifications and frameworks and ways that we can improve risk management at Lukka. And so that's one of the ways. But it also comes with the experience, the responsiveness, I think the culture, right? That the team is phenomenal. I mean, their professionalism and the responses that we hear about them when interacting with customers and the constant feedback is incredible. And so that's a big part of it as well, right? Is that how do we solve these problems with our customers and truly be a partner, right? Not just a software solution. So
sure, that makes sense. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into what exactly Lukka does, and maybe let's start off with what you guys do for businesses, and maybe give us some examples with. You don't have to give maybe customer names, but like
sure.
In this space, they use it like this, for example.
Yeah, happy to. So, I mean, really, there's two big buckets of products that we have. There's software, which is all cloud-based SaaS software solutions.
Right.
So similar to, how Salesforce sells their CRM solution.
Okay.
And then we've got, and so what the purpose of that software though is to create effectively a crypto subledger. So we're collecting all of their data from all the different sources that they collect it for, which is inherently very messy, and it's in a lot of different formats. And so we collect it, we normalize it, we actually integrate all of our data products into our software, and we were our own customers of our data products for years before we offered them standalone. And so we'll normalize all of this data so that it's in a consistent format. And then we can categorize it into the right accounting or tax treatment. We can apply values to it by bringing in pricing data. We have both our own pricing data and we bring in third-party pricing data. They're really at the customer's discretion, so whatever they want. And then from there, we report out on it based on the type of business that they are. So if they're a big corporation, like a crypto exchange, maybe they're looking for corporate books, so journal entries to feed into their primary general ledger system. It might be net asset value reports for funds or for fund admins that are servicing funds. And then we also cater to a lot of auditors, and so they might need different reports. I'd say we probably do, and we're approaching over 400 institutional customers today. We have the majority of those need a custom report in one way or another. So that's
Right.
it's just a normal offering that we do. And when I say a custom report, it's more of a template we build for them that enables them to feed it into downstream systems. So they'll need to feed it into NetSuite or into Advent Geneva, or sometimes just QuickBooks, or whatever the downstream traditional system is, because those systems can't accept a lot of the characteristics of crypto data. So we clean it up and massage it to look more like traditional data at the end of the process.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. So then how do tax professionals leverage Lukka? How is it similar and different too, maybe?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're calling us up for a tax report, but it all starts with the same data challenges that I just described, right? We need to collect it first, normalize it, and so on. We have whole teams that support reconciliation processes and a lot of tools that customers can use independently. But then at the end of the day, they want, and whether it's tax reporting, sometimes we'll run a separate set of accounting books from tax books. We have customers that need us to apply impairments logic to their inventory or to their depending on the type of business that they have. And so when they're coming to us for tax, I'd say there's a lot of education that comes along the way. Well, they'll have some questions to say, hey, I've got staking going on in my business. What's the appropriate treatment, right? And we have in-house subject matter experts as well, and we partner with a ton of the big name firms around the world to help support them with some of the logic. And then ultimately, from a software solution, we're just applying that to give them the final reports that they need. And so I'd say tax or accounting reports is the final step of what we're doing. Most of the value our customers are getting on everything before that, which is in cleaning up all the data, which usually people underestimate. I'd say they almost always underestimate it. And so the tax reporting part is really the easiest step out of all of it.
Got you. Okay. And then how does somebody like myself who has some crypto use Lukka?
Sure. Yeah. So we do have a free retail product. It doesn't have all the
Okay.
bells and whistles and the features that an institutional customer. So you're not going to get custom reports out of it. But
Right.
you can go in for free and load your portfolio, connect all your APIs, or load files if the exchange doesn't use APIs, and then we will present that all in our web portal, kind of like loading it into a portfolio management tool. And then you can right now purchase for either $10 or around $20 if you're a retail customer. Purchase the final tax reports that would feed into your annual tax reporting, so under your 1040. So what we'll create an 8949 attachment, and or a Schedule 1 if they have other income, like all the income scenarios like mining, staking, and whatnot. And so that's our retail offering, and they're benefiting from the same institutional quality. Probably most of the time, I'd say they don't even realize it. We're more known for our enterprise and institutional. services.
Right.
But we are offering it to the customers. We believe it's good for the industry, and it helps them. And you're going to see us trying to offer more things either cheaper or free going forward for the consumers,
Okay.
so that they can benefit from the same quality, because it's a big problem in not only the crypto industry, honestly, even traditional ones, that consumers think they're getting a certain quality product, but very often they're not. And so our aim is to try to educate them in understanding where they can, maybe get themselves into trouble if they're not doing things the right way.
Sure. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. And can you talk about some of the things that people need to understand, maybe from a business and or individual uh, side when they're investing and doing stuff with crypto?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, usually whenever anyone's diving in, I give some advice that's doesn't even really touch Lukkas products, but things as simple as just be very security conscious. I mean, an entire industry driven on top of technology, and so it's worth spending the extra effort to set up a password manager and really protect your information, right?
Yeah.
Like, blockchain doesn't fix all of that, right? It's only securing the transactions maybe, but it can also cause some very uncomfortable situations if someone does get a hold of it, because of just some poor practices in securing your passwords or your API keys or whatnot. So so that's kind of the first advice that I'll give anyone, really, regardless of whether you're representing a business or are an individual.
Sure.
And
I think
then
that you should be doing that just if you're using the internet, you should be doing that, I
I,
think, in my opinion.
I agree. It spans well outside of crypto.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, there's people think that they're going to be getting a 1099 form or other, related tax reforms like they usually get in the mail at the end of every year. And in crypto, very often you don't get that. There's some businesses that are doing it. Most of them are not. Most of them are still not. It's still not crystal clear whether or not they're required to do it. And so you just get a lot of different answers. And the more places that you're interacting with, the higher the likelihood is that you're going to encounter situations where you don't have a clean report to support you when filing your taxes at the end of the year. And so so that's kind of the big takeaway, is like expect for some things to not work as smoothly as you're used to. But there are lots of solutions out there. I mean, there's solutions other than Lukka that support tax filing as well. I'll say we see a lot of frustration from consumers because there's like 50 or more of these companies that are out there.
Right.
And many of them do not have correct tax or accounting logic applied, or you have to really know how to use the tool to do it yourself.
Right.
And so, certain little things, like if you have a Kraken account and a Coinbase account and a Gemini account, and you're moving your Bitcoin across them, some solutions will treat those transfers as acquisitions or disposals, and therefore, you've got recognition events when you shouldn't, or vice versa, right? We've really seen everything, and so, so I'd say it's very important to realize that you usually will need some sort of a software solution, whether it's Lukka or another one, to fix that for you if you're trading across multiple venues. If you're only trading on Coinbase and you're a pretty basic user, right, it's much simpler, and you can possibly rely on just the transaction reports you get from a single exchange. Not all of them, but many of them do support them, like Coinbase is doing that for theirs. But as soon as the activity happens outside of them, obviously that exchange can't help you, and you've got to have someone to kind of combine it from all those different exchanges. And so those are usually the users that have the most benefit from another solution outside their exchange.
Sure. So what advice do you give to individuals and or businesses? Because from my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the government, like agencies in many countries in the world, are actually monitoring how much money people are making from crypto. Is that fair to say, or what are your thoughts around that?
No, they're requesting information from some big businesses so that they can they can enforce tax compliance or other functions depending on what agency we're talking about, right? So
Okay.
they're really just doing the same thing that they do for any other business, but they're applying it to crypto. And they might need to get the info from different places than they would traditionally, but their intentions are the same here, right? It's,
Okay.
if you're the IRS, they're enforcing tax compliance as they should. And I recommend anyone trading crypto who's a US citizen or wherever they live and they pay their taxes to pay your taxes. Crypto is not exempt from it in most countries today, definitely not in the United States. So thinking that you don't have to pay taxes in your crypto, that's definitely something I would recommend against. But once you do that, the other thing that I'll say is it's really not as scary as most people think. I mean,
Okay.
the rules, I'm sure they'll evolve here, they'll improve, and they're going to touch more different situations. But for most of the basic crypto, like if you're buying and holding Bitcoin or Ether or really any crypto asset there, it's pretty straightforward to figure this out. If you're either paying short or long-term capital gains, and you might have some income if you're participating in mining or staking. And it's not as complex as people really think. Most of that has been figured out, and is very, very achievable. But they should make the effort to do it and make sure that they are including it in their taxes for sure.
Got you. No, I think that's really good advice. So I'm curious, where do you guys see Luca going? Because you signed some big partnerships, you acquired a company. Can you talk about kind of what you guys are doing and maybe like obviously you don't have to like talk about something you haven't released yet, but how are
Sure.
you working with these, new partnerships and acquiring a company to actually keep on top of the space and stay relevant? Because we've kind of mentioned it a few times throughout the show, this space is changing
Mhm.
hourly, daily, like it's going fast.
It is. It's lightning fast, which is very exciting, which can be challenging, but it is exciting. So it's a fun time for sure. Generally speaking, I mean, we're looking to continue to offer more and more data products that help people with all the various problems that they have with crypto data. We've honed in on two very, very important data products to start, which is
Okay.
our reference data product. And what reference data does is it normalizes all of the different asset ticker symbols, trading pairs, and other data elements that come from all of those sources. So that's how our software is able to fix that, is because we integrate reference data. And so it's a mapping of all of the assets that Coinbase lists, all the assets that Kraken, Gemini, and so on. And it brings them down to a consistent ID so that at the end of the day, even if those different exchanges use different ticker symbols for Bitcoin, Bitcoin is Bitcoin in our software. And then when you're getting to things like tax reporting and whatnot, that becomes very easy because we've corrected it all. So that's what
Okay.
reference data solves. And most of the retail customers probably don't even realize they're benefiting from it, honestly, which is okay. Institutions absolutely do that, particularly when they're higher volume. And many of the institutions, if they have their own internal systems they use, will subscribe to that reference data product because it covers over 14,000 spot crypto assets today.
Okay.
And when we get into derivatives and everything, we're into hundreds of thousands, and the trading pairs are tens of thousands as well across all of that. So that's the one very important, like really none of our other products would work without reference data. So that's our core. And then our pricing data is the next problem. And there's lots of different pricing data products that are out there that have different purposes. Our flagship one, which was a big problem that didn't exist in the industry, is Lukka Prime. And what Lukka Prime does is it gives you a fair market value price for the top 1,000 or so most liquid crypto assets. And the underlying methodology results in an executed price in contrast to an average like a VWAP. And that aligns to US GAAP or IFRS guidelines, among others. It's also SEC's guidance on crypto valuations. It aligns to IRS FAQs and so on. Really, the core takeaway on it is you get an executed price instead of an average, which is appropriate for post-trade reporting, striking NAV, any official bookkeeping. So it's very popular with auditors when performing audits. But then we offer a number of other data products too. So we will offer VWAPs. We do custom prices. Our data is powering S&P's crypto indices. And so we do have a number of other pricing products that support it as well. But that's a flagship one that's more unique, that was solving a very important problem.
Got you. Okay, interesting. So for businesses and or individuals looking to get into the space, what advice do you give them? Because it can be so daunting, right? And I think a lot of people still don't really understand what it even really is as a thing.
So what crypto is? Just
Well, I guess like what crypto is or how they could use it for their business.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, this kind of goes back to one of the reasons why I joined Lukka, and maybe even broader than that, why I joined the crypto industry, right? Because this applies to not just Lukka, it's the whole industry. And it was, crypto, I get asked all the time, they're like, what asset class does crypto fit into? And it's like, well, it doesn't apply just to one asset classes. It can be applied to any of them. It's just, right, if we're facilitating the transfer of assets using blockchain, those are tokenized assets or crypto assets. And crypto assets have a lot of advantages over traditional assets that aren't on blockchains. And it's because we can interact with them in new ways. And so we can do it across borders. We can do it in fractional quantities. We can trade these assets for one another. And when you do all of that, it makes the assets more accessible and to more people around the world. And so tokenizing assets that historically were not very accessible, like real estate, if we use, is an easy example because it's one of the least liquid assets traditionally. And if you can tokenize a piece of real estate and then sell it not in a whole quantity, but in fractional quantities, and you can sell it to someone that's all the way across the world, that's groundbreaking. I mean, that really changes the way that we think about it. I mean, I wouldn't be able to buy a piece of real estate in Tokyo from the United States that easily without this. And so, and we're not quite there yet with real estate specifically, but that's where I believe this is going. And so what we are seeing is people tokenize all kinds of assets. I mean, when we say we cover over 14,000 assets, those are not all just cryptocurrencies, right? I mean, I wouldn't even be able to tell you all the different assets. I mean, there's obviously people hear about stable coins, and those are backed by other assets, traditional assets, whether it's a fiat like US dollar or another one, or by gold or whatnot. But we see all the NFTs are representing a bunch of non-fungibles. We're seeing all different types of assets being tokenized. And then there's these big, online marketplaces where people can exchange them. And so that's the exciting part here. And I think the big takeaway. And so I believe that all assets around the world could benefit from tokenization in one way or another. And we probably haven't even seen where all of this is going yet, right? Like, I think we're just on the cusp of what's really going to change global commerce.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's fascinating to me how some banks have kind of pushed back on it a bit, and then some have adopted it. I know MasterCard just released something lately saying they're going to give you some sort of rewards with it. I know there's reward programs out there like Rakuten that actually give you some sort of cryptocurrency.
Sure.
And so we're like at the cusp of it. And I think the average person is going to start potentially getting exposed to it, if they haven't already, probably within the next 6, 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you think there's been such a pushback? And I can give you a personal example. For me, trying to buy cryptocurrency with my bank account, they'll block it all the time. I can't never buy it just straight from my bank account. I can also not buy it from my Visa card, but I can buy it from my MasterCard. And I've known a number of friends and that have had issues that have had to almost lie to their bank to just buy crypto. And it's interesting to me that like, I get why they're doing it, but it's kind of like, well, at the end of the day, it's my money. Like, you can't really tell me what to do. So I'm curious to know, in your thoughts, especially dealing with some of this thing, how the adoption has been from the traditional kind of industry. Are they still pushing back? Some kind of, where's their support, I guess?
I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that when you say banks, right, like banks offer a huge menu of services. And
True. Yeah.
it's not only like retail deposit solutions like what you're describing. And I'd say I'm seeing very few banks not launch businesses around crypto right now.
Okay.
Most of it is starting with fund services
Okay.
and some institutional business units. Of course, the retail ones are going to take a little bit longer here.
Yep.
But we know that there's a lot of traditional banks that have focused on crypto earlier, like Silicon Valley Bank, like Silvergate, and so on. But the mega banks aren't quite there yet, although we are seeing some announcements like Bank of America and some others now start to announce some things, and I'll be curious to see where it all goes. But I mean, I think all this is going to intersect, and I've said on lots of panels and heard lots of other thought leaders give their perspectives on the future of banking. Um, the role that banks play, I think it's safe that like those roles are still going to be important going forward. Like people are going to need loans. They're going to need banking solutions. They're going to need to transfer their money around and all the different traditional roles that banks play. Who's performing those roles is what's I'm curious to watch. Is Coinbase going to be construed more as a bank in the future? Or, Kraken already has their banking and depository license. And we're seeing a lot of these crypto exchanges now start to round out their offerings to go into what traditional banks are doing. And we're seeing the traditional banks start to launch certain things on a case by case here. They're doing it very cautiously. But at the end of the day, the one thing that's going to trump anyone's opinion of crypto is client demand or
Right.
customer demand. And if you're a fund administrator and one of your biggest customers is saying, I just bought a bunch of Bitcoin, can you still give me services? Like that, they're going to give a very different answer than a year ago when they were debating whether or not to get into crypto or not. And so that's what we're seeing this year, is that old fashioned demand is driving a lot of the acceleration of these different businesses. And we're seeing some very conservative institutions out there do some pretty I'd say unique things, launching businesses and adopting crypto, which is very fun to see, but the learning curve is just huge. um, and so I don't know where it's going to end up. I mean, someone will have to fill all those roles, right? um, and I mean, we've seen Robinhood, right, is done something more innovative with as a broker dealer. um, and they've had their own challenges, right? Which I think is going to come honestly with any innovation. And we're going to see more and more people do it, but they did some things that no one else had done before, which was very exciting, which is, offering securities and whatnot in fractional quantities, which is kind of a little taste of what the whole crypto industry is doing. And so I think a lot of those ideas are what people are going to be attracted to, and then all the businesses will follow suit. So.
No, I agree with that. I think that makes some sense. It's interesting to get like somebody like your opinion that's like in it, right? And talking to these institutions, because obviously we all know like what you read online is not always 100% true, or it's some sort of skewed version of it, right? And it's interesting to get your opinion on this stuff. And it's good to see that these traditional kind of banks and institutions are actually at least talking about it, right? If they haven't implemented it yet.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say obviously I can't share any confidential things that are going on that we're involved in, but there's a lot of momentum. I mean, there's very few large banks or big financial institutions that everybody's familiar with, I think, that aren't working on it in some way, and everyone's got their own priorities and objectives and strategies that are driving it. But there's a lot of movement. Like I don't see much resistance anymore. It's more maybe thoughtfulness, right? Trying to do it the right way, or waiting for more formal rules, depending on the type of business that they are on a case by case. But I mean, it's here, and if a business isn't thinking about it, they're at risk of of not being able to take advantage of some tremendous opportunities going forward, you know. So I mean, I think people, if they're not looking at it, they need to be. And I think people really need to try to stay away from some of the rumors that we hear that are pretty thoughtless, honestly. Kind of like when people talk about how blockchain is contradictory to green objectives and whatnot, I think is a pretty silly statement. And some of those things are just distractions. Anybody that actually is in the industry that understands it knows that blockchain will make efficiencies and probably support green initiatives 1,000 times before it'll hurt them. So, I'd say focus on the advantages, and it's worth making the effort to learn about it for sure.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So you guys have a whole library of education on your website, and I think that's a really good resource.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
can you talk about some of the content and things that people can learn on there? And then if there's any other resources that you would recommend people maybe check out as well to learn about the space and maybe how they can get involved.
Yeah, a lot of our guidance, and we're building that out rapidly. So, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's great that you've checked it out. We've actually just recently changed that to be all free content on our site. So we actually
Awesome.
had it in a product where we were charging for subscriptions of it, and we decided to just offer that free. And our goal is to build that out in more topics
Okay.
over time here quickly. Right now, we talk about a lot of the different tax and accounting related uses, other maybe perspectives or responses to some of the regulatory updates or the different rules that are coming out. And so it's usually a CPAs or tax professionals or controllers, CFOs are going to be most attracted to the content. We do have some basic content on there too, and we're looking to build out some of the basics. But honestly, I think the best way to learn is through hands-on experience and doing it in a safe way, and so set up your password manager, sign up for a more mainstream crypto exchange account somewhere, and and buy a small amount that you're okay losing to learn.
Sure.
And transfer it around, sign up for a wallet, interact with a decentralized exchange. I mean, they're actually a lot easier to use than traditional in most cases. And sometimes you just need to kind of go through the motions and learn about it, but I would do it in small increments, and then work your way up until you're comfortable. And once you're like, okay, this is easier than I thought, it's really easier than signing up for my bank account.
Yeah.
People will realize that it's not as scary as they might think.
No, I agree. And I think you could start with, like $100. Like it doesn't have to be thousands of dollars. You could even start with less than $100, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, whatever someone's appetite is for, right? I mean, that's one of the great things about crypto is you could buy $5 worth
yeah, like,
on somewhere, right? You don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. And so it's actually really, really easy to play with it without actually, risking any of your savings or anything. So
yeah. And it's very cool once you're able to like send money or, well, like your crypto, like to somebody else instantly, where if you were doing that in different parts of the world, it can take days, right? And it costs a ton of money, where it's basically just instant, which is pretty wild to think about, and just how it's kind of different, right? And changing things.
absolutely. I mean, this year, the way that the decentralized exchanges have taken off is definitely a huge development, and we have to do a lot of things in unique ways. And I think that's again in a part of the ecosystem that's just getting started. I mean, the stuff that's going on with different products and offerings is just really exciting. And so keeping up with it is just constant, constantly staying aware and being in it and being flexible. So
No, very, very cool. But we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about Lukka and any other links you want to mention?
sure, yeah. So our website is Lukka, Lukka.tech. And you can read about any of our products, whether they're institutional or the consumer ones from there, along with the educational contents that you saw, or even job posts. If you're looking to get into the crypto industry, we're doing a ton of hiring. And yeah, thank you very much for having me. And happy to come back anytime.
Very cool. Well, Robert, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you and have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.